a few more minutes. Yes, and let's see. It can be hard to get in and out of the various sessions.
Well, I am trying to get back where I can see everyone.
Well, we can see you.
Yeah, but I want to see you.
I understand.
There we are. Yay.
Okay, welcome. Welcome, everyone. Why don't I go ahead and get us started? Hopefully people will continue to join. But for those of you who are already with us, welcome to the Memphis Story Early Childhood Breakout Session. Thank you all for being here. And an extra big thank you to Miss Alicia Norman and Miss Towanda Peete-Smith for joining us as leaders of this important conversation about what it's like to integrate social, emotional health and wellness into our early childhood programs here in Memphis. At this time, we want to open up the conversation to include all of our listeners as we try to answer your questions regarding this topic. If you would, please type any questions you have into the chat and I will read and pose those questions to our session leaders. Please know that you can send your questions directly to me if you want to remain anonymous, or you can just chat to the whole group. And while you get started and while people continue to join the session, I have a few questions myself to begin the conversation. So, Towanda and Alicia, I hope you get tired of hearing this, but it is such a privilege to have leaders like you in our city leading the education of the children you serve. Thank you so much for the incredible work you do and for the many young lives that you have nurtured over the years. So before I jump in, if you would, please just give a quick reintroduction to yourself and your work. Alicia, I think you're up first.
Thank you, Mia, and good afternoon to everyone. Thank you guys for joining us today. My name is Alicia Norman, and I am the former principal of Perea Preschool, where I served our staff, students, and families for 20 years. And I'm so excited to have this conversation with you all today about the importance of social emotional learning at the preschool level. So just look forward to diving into those questions, and I hope you guys have questions for us.
Greetings, I am Towanda Peete-Smith, the preschool director for Porter-Leath, and I've been in early childhood for 20 plus years and very excited about spending a little bit of my time today with you all and talking about the great things that Alicia and I've done with social emotional learning in our programs.
Okay, thank you both. So I want to start by posing this question to each of you. I have had the privilege of working with you both over the past 5 years, and I feel like all three of us have experienced a lot of growth in our personal buy-in for the work of social emotional health and learning as being foundational for early childhood education. And I just kind of wonder with each of you, was there an aha moment in relation to the importance of this work, or has it been something that's built gradually over time? Alicia?
So I'll start, Mim, and I see some of my Pereaites on the phone, on the call. I think Annie Griffin, and yeah. I don't know if that's Katie Pullman from Perea. The name is spelled differently. And then I think I see Kelly, or she was on the call. And we work with Mia and with Towanda Peete-Smith in this effort. So for me, Mia, I would say it was gradual because with Perea, we used the high scope curriculum, and embedded within the high scope curriculum has been the privilege to teach social emotional learning as well as assess social emotional learning on a surface level. We all know that those social skills is something that is somewhat of a norm at this age, which is good because our students really need them. And so we were always doing some of SEL, but once we started the work about 5 years ago, that work truly expanded to our teachers, our staff, our children, and our families. And instead of more of an implied approach to social emotional learning, the work became very intentional and explicit by way of teaching it every single day and incorporating SEL in every part of the day, in every part of our work. And for me, once we started this work with you all about 5 years ago with Memphis, it was, for me, the what, like what are we saying? What is SEL? And it did not take me long to get the what, because I was already familiar with it. And then the why, I remember being at a conference, and I remember listening to Michelle Kinder speak about just the profound impact that social emotional learning would have, across our classrooms. And I wept at that conference that day, because my why was sealed. Why we do this work was sealed for me that day. And then how was and I've shared this with you before, Mim, the what, the why, and the how. And how is probably what we'll talk about maybe a little bit later, because the how is the steps that we put in place to implement the work with fidelity, to make sure that we are truly offering SEL across the board, where it's impacting our entire community, and where we are building a culture that is indicative of the work that we're doing in social emotional learning. So I know that was a long way to answer that. It was not an aha moment, but it was a gradual progression of the true need for the work, and just the way the work was happening in our great city.
Thank you. Yeah, gradual progression. What about you, Towanda? What's yours?
So I want to shout out our Porter-Leathites as well. Happy to see them on our call as well. So I needed to shout them out. But I would say that I think our leaders saw it as an aha moment. The vision was there. I think the team saw it as gradual. And sometimes you can have a vision, and you need a lot of people in that vision to actually make it into fruition. And I think once we really understood the importance of social emotional development, because Alicia and I was talking a little bit about this, and what we were talking about was simply that in early childhood, you're always working on kindergarten readiness skills. We're always working to get children ready for kindergarten. And so in that work, sometimes common themes like trust and caring and empathy and sharing, those are things that technically you really don't teach. And so making that a part of our work every day for our program. And when we first started out, we started out with the curriculum Opening Up the World of Learning. So it was OWL. And OWL was a curriculum that it had a little bit of social and emotional development in it, but it did not have a lot. When we were also looking at our assessment tools, we had to look at that social emotional piece. And so what we did find is once we started really being intentional about the work in social and emotional development, we found that even in that social emotional domain, our children were doing better. So definitely the work that we've done with social and emotional development has definitely helped our children.
That's awesome. And Towanda, you mentioned during the pre-record session that Porter-Leath has found SEL so important to its early childhood program that it created a position for an SEL manager. And so I kind of wonder, and this question is really for both of you, but do you feel that every preschool program needs a similar position or someone whose job it is to ensure that time and attention is paid to this important aspect of child development?
I did say that, and we do have a social emotional learning manager, and she's been very instrumental in this work. I would be remiss if I said that it was one person that moved this work along. It has been several people. But I can say that the work that our social and emotional learning manager did kept us intentional. She helped us work through a mission statement that was phenomenal that we could buy into, which was instilling an enriched culture of social and emotional learning experiences for students, families, and staff in a safe, caring, and nurturing environment. And once we had that mission statement, we were able to buy into the other things that we needed to do to ensure not only was our children in a good place, but really looking at our staff. Because if your staff is not in a good place where they understand ACEs or trauma, then they're not going to be able to put our babies in a great place. And so I am happy that our agency took it a step further. They got a grant for us, and our grant, HOPE, which is helping our professionals excel. So we not only took this social and emotional realm with our children, but we've made it a part of the Porter-Leath culture.
That's awesome. And Alicia, my recollection is that you also at Perea implemented a position specifically to hold the SEL piece. What can you?
Yes, so I'm going to start what Towanda ended. She said they received a grant to which allowed them to incorporate an SEL coach, and having an SEL coach is very important. And I think it's important center specific. I know that as our funding allow us to have an SEL coach over a particular program, something is better than nothing. But I think every site, whether you're a school or preschool site, wherever you are, everyone needs an SEL coach, because the work has to be that intentional and that infused into the organization for it to work. What having an SEL coach at my site allowed for us to do was immediate, in the moment support for a dysregulated child, teaching them, pushing in or pulling out or accessing the calm down area, or a reset classroom, which gave them the opportunity in that day, in that moment, to support that child, versus having to do a referral and wait for someone to come and for someone to observe the behavior. And I know that this is typical and is what our budgets typically afford us to do. But if you can afford an SEL coach at every site so that you could have that immediate support, we saw a lot of growth from that model. We saw children learning those very important key skills to be able to self-regulate, maybe if not in the next episode of their lid being flipped down the road, they were then able to process, remember that push in support, and remember the skills that they needed to self-regulate to make those best choices on their own. And the benefit of that is phenomenal, to have that person not just there supporting the students, but supporting the teachers. Our SEL coach jumps in. She's available all throughout the day if a teacher needs a break, because we know that a dysregulated adult cannot regulate a child. So just being there to assess and to support the needs on a daily basis is something that I think we need to consider for every site. So if you're a school site, you need an SEL coach. And I would love to advocate for that in any ways that I can, for that to happen, because our students deserve it. The schools deserve it. The teachers deserve to have that support, because sometimes the behavior can be so big, and we know that it interrupts instruction time. It interrupts, the flow of your day, and to have somebody right there to pull with that student, to work with that student one-on-one, it's invaluable. So we really need to advocate for the SEL coach for each early childhood center site.
Yeah, and what I hear you saying, Alicia, is that that coach is so helpful when with the child, to support that child and to help give that child the additional time and attention that the child is clearly communicating a need for, right?
Yes.
But also modeling for the teacher
Mhm.
that interaction with the child and skills and strategies for calming and soothing the child and de-stressing, helping the teacher,
Yes.
calm and de-stress as well, which, I loved everything that Dina Simmons talked about in terms of, the adults, we have to take care of ourselves too, so anyway, okay. I loved what Yetta said in the earlier session about social emotional health being the infrastructure for the whole educational program. Social and emotional has to be there. It has to come first before a child can sit still and focus on learning, right?
Yes.
So can you talk a little bit about what that means in the early childhood space? Because I feel like, just like our young children have the most to learn in their academic journey, they also have the most to learn in terms of social interactions and emotional regulation and these skills that are necessary for that academic journey. So in the same way that you are preparing a child, kindergarten ready maybe shouldn't just be about learning letters and numbers, right? Because this infrastructure of social and emotional wellness maybe also needs to be part of that package.
Yes. Yes, and I'll go first because I'm older than Towanda, and I may forget what I was about to say. I don't remember it quite well. But definitely SEL needing to be the infrastructure of school K through 12, because it is so important to make sure that every student is at the table ready and capable of learning. And so many of our children are not ready to sit at the table. When you have such big emotions that get in the way of learning, it is preventing that child from growing. So it has to be the infrastructure, and we have to start with the leadership. We have to have leadership buy-in of the importance of SEL. Principals, assistant principals, superintendents, we must all join together in this fight for infusing SEL into our program. And then the teachers, it took me, and I must say, when I thought, and Annie Mae can kind of, and even Amy, she's on the call with Perea, I really thought I was doing SEL with high school until we really, dug deeper and we began to explicitly teach SEL. And it took me a year or a little longer to change some of my practices and some of my ways with my own staff and then with the students. And one of the things that stand out to me most, the thing that gets in the way of learning is behavior. And we learn to approach behavior differently. We learned that all behavior was telling us something. So we use this term, chasing the why. And ma'am, you know this, Towanda know this. Chasing the why of that behavior helps us to get to the core reasons for the dysregulation, for the meltdown, for the acting out, because the getting to the why is important, so you'll know how to support the child. And not only that, the children then begin to trust us. They trust us in a different way. They build a relationship with us. We build a relationship with them where they're able now to be honest and vulnerable and tell us what's really going on so that we'll know how to support their child. Example, if a child comes into the classroom at the top of the morning and they are sad, they are angry, they're having a meltdown, and you know that it has nothing to do with school, just simply asking, I see that you're very angry, you have some really, really big emotions. Can you tell me what happened this morning? And they may say, my brother took my potato chips in the car on the way to school. And you know how to deregulate based on that conversation alone. And then you can lead that little person's day in a better direction by simply asking, through the chasing the why mindset, what's going on? How can I help you? You have big emotions. You seem so very angry, and you are validating their feelings, and you're giving them the space to talk about it, and it changes the direction of the day for their student.
That is awesome. Towanda, do you have anything to add, or we've got some good questions coming in? I'm happy to shift to those.
Let's shift to the questions.
All right. So the first one is, how do your schools approach situations where children have socio-emotional issues that may be stemming from a toxic home environment? How can this be approached in a way that's constructive and does not make the situation worse for the child?
That's an awesome question. And I would say that many of us face toxic parenting relationships. What we do realize is that even with the child, the teacher, the community, it's important for us to provide safe havens for our children, meaning outlets. It's important for us to provide resources, mental health resources, resources for families to get at the root of where that trauma is coming from. What I also know is that even in classrooms, as you work with those children and those families, we also created, it was a exploratorium room, and it was a room where the children actually had faces of how they felt. It was also textured, so when they felt something, they could describe it, but it was a calm down room. And so in saying that, I think as we work with families to identify what their ACEs are, it's also important to make sure that home and school is aligned. And so as we give pour more into our parents and our families and our communities, then we will be able to build better children.
Yes, and I agree with everything Towanda said. So one of the, just if I had to say something that I was so very proud of as far as Perea is concerned, is the relationship that we build with families. And that is so important from day one. You know, of course, there's a mandatory parent orientation, and we had quite a few mandatory requirements. And I know everybody don't like to hear the word mandatory, so I'll say strongly encouraged. I forgot Kelly may still be on the line, and they got on me for that. But through that, we built very strong relationships with the families. And as Towanda said, bridging that gap between home and school and making sure that we are partnering and doing what's best for the child. And when you have that big behavior, one of the most important things was first to support that child, and then to begin to document the behavior, and then bring the parent in on the conversation as a support, as a partner. You know, we're seeing this big behavior in class, and can you tell us what this looked like at home? And, you know, what do you do when you see the behavior at home? Because that could help us support the child here. So it brings them in as a partner, and not like, okay, your child is cutting up, ma'am, and we really need you to come up here and talk to us about the behavior. We had to take a different approach. We had to approach the parents as a partner. And then when the parent, you build a relationship, you bring them in as partners. And once they realize that they are partners, they're more vulnerable. They're more willing to open up and say, I do see this at home, and this is what I do, but it might not quite work for them. So then we begin to work together so that they have as much buy-in and say so as to what this is going to look like, because having them on our side gives us more ammunition to really, you know, get to the source of the dysregulation, because some of it is beyond the classroom. Some of the behavior, some of the issues are beyond what the teachers can do. Our teachers are not SEL coaches. They're not social workers. So when we get the teacher, the student, the admin, and the parent as a part of the problem, I think, man, we are more able to create healthy culture so that everybody can talk about the situation. But the most important thing is building that relationship with the families from day one, documenting those behaviors, and then bringing a parent in as a partner and coming up with a plan of support for the student, even through the SAM meetings, you know, that we created. You know, making them a part of that or the results of, so that they can, you know, have input into how we're going to support their child, because that's important. I had, you know, even as a parent, I really tried to approach every situation feeling as a parent, because we all have children. The majority of us on this call, we have children, and you treat parents the way you want to be treated. You treat children with behavior the way I wanted my child who had behavior problems treated in school, with respect and understanding. So
Yeah. Well, and I think what I hear you saying is that, you know, if you can first establish a relationship with that parent, the caregiver, the family, that's really your only hope of being able to ultimately impact that toxic environment at home, is through loving the parent there or the caregiver. Y'all, hard to believe, but it is already time for us to wrap this up. The important thing is that we have started a really important conversation, and I hope we can continue it and continue to support one another as we work together to educate the youngest members of our community. You know, I have to say, one of the things that Dina said that just touched me so was, what if when we walk into a school building, we say, those are our children, all of our children. It's powerful. And I think it begins with the very youngest folks, and you all are front and center in working with them. So thank you both. Thank you to everybody who was in the room with us. Real quickly, to find the next session, you want to click leave in the bottom right-hand corner of your Zoom screen, and then return to your browser window with the Expo Pass platform. Go to the schedule in Expo Pass, and the next part of the next session will be the journal reflection room to capture real-time thoughts and reflections on the mood and message of the day that you've had so far. So thank you, everyone.
And ma'am, I'm so sorry we didn't answer the question that was there, but
we're going to continue the conversation. We'll get there.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you both. Thank you, all of you.
Benita, I'm going to drop my number in the chat so she can call me with her question. Benita, if she can hear me, okay?
I'll get it to her.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.